Welcoming traveler. Get ready to level up in fantasy football.
What is going on, all you cool cats out there listening to another episode of the Fantasy Football RPG Podcast? I am very, very excited about tonight and the guest that we have on. But before we introduce him, we have Mike, as always, on the show with us, FF Mike Cash. Welcome back, buddy.
Hey, everybody.
And Evan is here with us tonight, EP Low on Sleeper. How you doing, Evan?
Good evening, everybody.
But the Piece de la Resistance here, the big guest that we have, I'm super excited to have Mr. Dave Kluge on the podcast. How you doing, man?
Doing great. Excited to talk some football here. It's crazy how quickly the season goes by. Like, it feels like the game. I mean, the season did just kick off like 10, 11, 12 days ago or whatever. And here we are previewing week 3 matchup. So just trying to soak up every second of it that I possibly can and just, enjoying this season.
Yeah, man, it feels like a time warp almost. Like, even outside of football things, the weeks just seem to go by so much fast. I guess you have things to look forward to, and it's just much more entertaining of weeks. But yeah, week 3 already, it's crazy. And
I'm doing 6 shows a week, writing a couple of articles every single week, and it seems like I still cannot get enough content out there. It's like I'm still trying to look back at the previous week, and then all of a sudden, a new week's here. So trying to do what we can to stay on top of it all.
6 shows a week. That is gnarly. I'm sitting here with 1 show a week, and I'm like, whew, sweating already. But that's awesome, man. I mean, I'm sure if anyone is watching this, they've at least heard of you. If not, I don't know what they're doing if they are following fantasy football. Obviously, you are a writer and podcast host for Football Guys, which is, you guys are kind of the big boys. So even more excited to have you on. You do some ranking for Fantasy Pros as well, but besides that, is there anything else that you're kind of working on? You want to tell the people about?
No, that pretty much covers it. Like I said, 6 shows a week is kind of crazy what we're doing right now. But I had my show, The Launchpad, which was nominated for an FSWA Football Podcast of the Year last year. Had a lot of success with that. And then Alfredo Brown over at Football Guys was doing his thing with the Pretend GM. And we just decided to kind of put our heads together and make one mega show over at Football Guys. So we got the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show coming out now. 6 days a week. We're doing audio and video shows Monday through Thursday, audio only on Friday. And then we've got a live show that we do on Sunday morning. So definitely check that out if you hadn't. It's been a lot of fun working with Alfredo side by side this year.
Yeah, man, very cool. I've seen the Launchpad. That was an awesome show. And I caught a little bit of your show that I think came out today where you had Jagger on, who we've had as a guest. He is awesome. So that was cool to see him on there with you guys. But like I said, man, just very appreciative for you just taking the time to come and chat with us. We are very, very new to a lot of this, but we've had on some awesome people and just very appreciative of the whole community.
Yeah, it's an awesome community to be a part of.
It really is. Yeah. Okay. Well, I had a little bit of like an intro question to get us warm, but we also have quite a lot to talk about. So I'm feeling like we just kind of get into this thing. You guys feeling warm and ready to talk some football?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's hit it.
Let's hit it. Well, I say let's start hot, but let's cool off slightly just because it's a slightly sad topic. We got to get to the Nick Chubb news. Very, very unfortunate injury for him. One of the more gruesome injuries I've personally witnessed on a football field. No good. Season ender, surely career ender. I hope not. I'm wishing him the best for sure. But yeah, I'll mention before we move on here, there is a link in the episode description below to give to his charity. If you are feeling generous, I'm sure he would appreciate it, and it's a good cause. So look at that, look into that. That is down below, like I said. But with that injury, I mean, that kind of bleeds into talking fantasy football wise. We're looking at like a Jerome Ford possible season for him as the fill-in, and I mean, besides that, I did have a lot of Twitter buzz about potential free agents, Kareem Hunt making a visit. To me, it feels like it's Jerome Ford's backfield pretty much no matter who they sign, unless it's like a big time trade. But I want to know, I mean, Mike and Dave, I think you guys are definitely more on the Twitterverse than I am or Evan. Have you guys seen any buzz out there that seems like there's a running back out there that is, competing for Jerome Ford's role a little bit if they do get signed?
Yeah, I mean, I'll hit it real quick. There's rumors floating around that Kareem Hunt's going to sign there, but I've seen some of the stuff that Dave's talking about. I think we're on the same page here. Like, this is Ford's backfield. If Hunt signs there, he's signing purely as a depth role because he knows the offense and that he can fill in and give him a breather when he needs to be. Nothing that I saw from Kareem Hunt last year makes me worried about Ford's role this year. Really, the worst case scenario is a Cam Akers trade, but 22 carries for 29 yards also doesn't scare me. But Dave, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the Browns have a lot to really give here. I'm hearing these rumors about like, oh, maybe they should go out and trade for Jonathan Taylor. They kind of emptied their draft capital, making the trade for Deshaun Watson. They don't have a lot of draft capital to give up. They're in salary cap hell right now with this Deshaun Watson contract and the Myles Garrett contract. So I don't see any situation where they can afford to bring in a guy like Jonathan Taylor. I mean, if they can get Kareem Hunt to come in for $2-3 million, which sounds likely, I think that does unfortunately limit the ceiling for Jerome Ford. Right now, as is, if it's Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong, wheels up for Jerome Ford. He could be a possible top 10, top 12 running back. If Hunt comes in there, he's going to assume a lot of the passing down work, which is going to lower that ceiling a little bit. But that's really the worst case scenario, is that Hunt comes into the picture. Now, I think it was kind of a benefit that news came out because that's going to push his fab cost down a little bit. People after seeing last night's game in primetime, they were talking about dropping 100% of their fab on Kareem or on Jerome Ford. But now with the Kareem Hunt rumors, you might be able to get him for a little bit cheaper. So if I'm in short leagues where, you don't have a lot of bench spots and waivers are, pretty flush throughout the year, I'm probably only looking at like 12 to 15% on Jerome Ford. But if you're in a deep league, he's one of those guys that doesn't pop up all that often. I'd be okay looking upwards of 60% on Ford this week. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. I will say it is a little tough spending, 100% of your fab on Ford, especially because I get it. It's a long-term play. He should be the guy there the rest of the way. But, his next week's matchup is against the Titans, who are pretty stingy on the run. So it's one of those things where like, okay, I'm going to spend all my fab. And then am I starting Jerome Ford? Because it doesn't feel good. It's kind of like a Joshua Kelly situation with the same team with the Titans. Didn't have a great showing either. So that's a little tricky. I will definitely agree to that. And it does feel like the Browns sort of showed us that they like Ford more anyway, or at least liked his affordability more than Kareem Hunt by not re-signing Kareem Hunt. So I do think it's Ford. But yeah, spending 100% on your fab is, I don't know about that personally.
Yeah. And also,
Ford, go ahead.
You go ahead. Oh, okay. I'll jump in. So looking at what Ford did last night, there's nothing that I saw there that I'm worried about what his role will be for the team going forward. He looks explosive. He looks like the next guy up. He looks like he's going to completely consume this backfield. And the Steelers defense is not a great defense. Like, they're pretty good at stopping the run. They were missing Cam Hayward. He still was able to run wild over them. And the pull away from Levi Wallace just really showed that he has a burst that Kareem Hunt no longer has.
Yeah, what was it, like a 60-something yard run he had?
It was the perfect number. It was a 69-yard run.
I didn't want to say it. I wanted you to have it.
Nice. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the profile to be a 3-down back. We saw it in college. He can catch passes. He can run between the tackles. He can get outside. He's got the breakaway speed. He's got the burst. I think there's kind of this misconception that, like, if you're not 220 pounds, you can't do it in the NFL. But, he kind of, I hate to make the comp because it seems kind of lazy with him breaking out last year, but kind of reminds me of Tony Pollard in a way, where he's kind of been that guy that we haven't seen a whole lot of, but when he does get the ball in his hand, he's got a lot of juice. I could see him really running away with the job this year in Cleveland.
Is there any concern over the offensive line in Cleveland moving forward? Obviously, Nick Chubb is one of the best runners of the football. But you look at their PFF grade right now for run blocking, and they're in the bottom third. The previous 2 seasons, they've been a top 5 run blocking unit. So is there any concern with having a lesser back there that run blocking may actually become an issue?
Yeah, I mean, last night's outing probably weighs heavily on that, going up against the Steelers. So I don't think the offensive line is as bad as the PFF grade makes it out to be, but we saw Ford yesterday. He had one play where he got bottled up, the 69-yard rush we were talking about, that he was able to cut back up field and turn into a 69-yard play. He had another play where he got hit like 8 yards behind the line of scrimmage, was able to bounce off a defender and turn it into a first down. So good players are going to make nothing into something. So again, I don't know if he's got this sky high, overall RB1 ceiling, but the volume's going to be there. The talent's there. I think he could easily, if Kareem Hunt doesn't sign with the team, finish as a top 10, top 12 guy.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we've talked a good amount about that. Let's go ahead and move on to the other sort of, just happened to be just mostly RB news that I kind of collected for us here. David Montgomery out a couple weeks with a thigh injury, I read. I'm hoping this means our Jahmyr Gibbs stonks are going way, way up. I am a little worried about HTDC doing a Dan Campbell thing and playing a little bit of Craig Reynolds. I feel like we shouldn't be worried about that because it's Craig Reynolds versus their, first round top 12 drafted RB and Jahmyr Gibbs. But we did see him a little bit. We saw Reynolds go in there and take a little bit of that Monty role after Montgomery got injured. How worried are we about Craig Reynolds stealing any work here, or are we just wheels up on Jahmyr Gibbs? Evan, you want to chime in?
Yeah, so I think they've made it very clear that they want to use Gibbs as an offensive weapon. I think that also means that they want to try and keep him a little bit fresher than a standard bell cow back that we think of from back in the day. I think the days of bell cow backs are kind of gone at this point. So I do see a little bit usage for Craig Reynolds moving forward here. I don't know how many snaps we're really going to look at. Maybe they end up shifting to, a one running back, maybe zero in the backfield, maybe an empty set. Play a little bit more, throw a little bit more to the wide receivers, spread the offense out.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I definitely foresee an implementation there. I'm really hoping that Jahmyr Gibbs starts giving them a reason to have him take everything, break off a couple more of these special runs that he's already had where he looks unstoppable, just juking people out of their shoes, and give them no reason to put anyone else back there. Just for fantasy football alone, I would love to see it. Okay. Well, besides that running back situation, we can talk a little bit about the other weird running back situation with Cam Akers, kind of a repeat from last year, him dealing with, kind of showing up, not really. And then, oh no, we're going to trade him and dealing with the turmoil of that. It's just such a weird situation. It begs to wonder what he did or keeps doing that keeps putting the Rams such on edge with him. But I don't know. I guess, do you guys foresee a trade destination for Cam Akers that can save what little there is left of his fantasy relevancy? Or is this a guy where you are dropping him down the drain and not looking back? Dave, you got any insight?
I think Minnesota would be a pretty good landing spot for him. Alexander Mattison, they really wanted him to be the guy. I didn't really see it too much this offseason, his just dwindling efficiency over the last few years. When you look at the splits that he had in those starts that people would get so excited about, 4 of those 6 starts came against bottom of the barrel run defenses. And when he had to face decent run defenses, he struggled. So I wasn't really too sold on Alexander Mattison, and he has looked very woeful through these first 2 games. So I think that he could work there. But I also just want to point out that, I'm not completely sold on Cam Akers getting traded, because his rookie season, Darrell Henderson was the guy to start the year, and we were wondering, why isn't Cam Akers getting the rock? And then the second half of the season, he was getting 20 touches per game, and he blew up down the stretch. And then he had the Achilles tear, missed year 2. Last year, though, was the same thing. Remember, he was a healthy scratch. They said that they were going to trade him, and then he came back, and he was the workhorse down the stretch. So I don't know if these are just some mind games that Sean McVay is playing to get the best out of Cam Akers and maybe some extra motivation or something like that, but it is, Sean McVay is up there with Bill Belichick as far as head coaches that I will not trust, and the mess that he plays with running backs. So I don't know. I'm trying not to overreact here. Kyron Williams got a ton of touches last week, 10 targets, whatever, 18, whatever carries that he had, but he was terribly inefficient with those touches. I don't think he's the long-term option there. So we've seen this with Malcolm Brown. We've seen it with Darrell Henderson. We've seen it with CJ Anderson. He will give anybody a huge workload and make them fantasy relevant, but I'm not sure that it's Kyron Williams long-term. We might see Cam Akers go back to Los Angeles.
Yeah. That I mean, they did it 1 year. What was to stop them from doing the same exact thing this year? I will say, I think it's McVay and Belichick and Pete Carroll on the Mount Rushmore of frustrating for fantasy, specifically coaches in the NFL.
Well, Rushmore's got 4, so we're going to throw Arthur Smith up there as well.
There it is. There we go. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I agree with that.
All of my Kyle Pitts shares just screamed at once. Heartbreaking.
Mike, we could have like a little fifth head that's hidden that could be like a Matt Canada head if you want.
Oh my gosh.
Just throw that in there.
Matt Canada just ruining my fandom and my fantasy teams.
Yeah, it is a brutal time over there. But okay, great. I mean, that was pretty much all I had on here that I really wanted to talk about in terms of the news. I'm sure there was other things that I missed, but those seemed like the big ones. Let's take it into some game previews. We are basically just going to pick one of these upcoming week 3 games, and if you want to just sort of talk over your thoughts on them or which pieces you were really looking at to start in fantasy, I think we can kind of keep it loosey-goosey. But out of this list, I mean, we'll start with Mike first because I heard your selection and I want to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you throwing me the bone first. I'm really excited for this Vikings-Chargers matchup. I'm looking at 2 teams that have had rough defenses and some very, very good offenses. Chargers might be getting desperate with an 0-2 start. Maybe we see a QJ sighting as they try and mix up some of their personnel. So snap count to watch is QJ versus Josh Palmer, and then just a matchup to watch is the entire Chargers receivers against a subpar Minnesota secondary. Dave, what's a matchup you're excited about? What are the pieces you want to talk about?
I'm excited about every matchup, man. It's football. I couldn't be happier about this. But the one that really jumps out to me on this slate probably isn't the one that like everybody's getting super excited about, But the Indianapolis Colts at Baltimore Ravens. I've been so excited about this Ravens offense. I'm not a Ravens fan, but you can see the Lamar Jackson jersey behind me. I talked ad nauseum this entire preseason about what Todd Monken was going to do to revamp this offense, and we saw it in a very small taste. Like the second half of week 2, it finally started humming, where we saw Nelson Aguilar and Odell Beckham and all of these tertiary and fourth option guys getting involved in the offense, and it was exciting to see. So one, I want to see if they can ride that wave into week 3. The other 2 things that I'm excited about are the running back matchups on both sides of the ball. We just saw Zach Moss come off 98% of the snaps, which is unheard of in today's NFL. He saw 100% of the carries and 100% of the targets out of the backfield. So I want to see if that can maintain, because if so, Zach Moss is going to be a plug-and-play top 15 running back until, if ever, Jonathan Taylor does return. And then obviously on the other side of the ball, the other running back situation there, Justice Hill and Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards had the better fantasy performance last week, and I think that a lot of people are just assuming that he is the guy there. If you look at consensus rankings, Gus Edwards is ranked ahead of Justice Hill. Justice Hill was more efficient with his touches. He got more carries. He got more targets. He got first crack at the goal line work. The only difference is Gus Edwards happened to plunge it into the end zone and had the better fantasy day. So I think that I think Justice Hill could be a great fit in this Todd Monken offense, and I want to see if his role can expand a little bit in this game. So a lot of really key, fun points throughout this game that I'm going to be paying close attention to.
Well, I feel very conflicted because I am validated because that was my pick that I was going to talk about. But I am upset with you, Dave. No, just kidding. That's awesome. Yeah, I saw that too, and I'm like, if I hope to God that Anthony Richardson like comes out of the concussion protocol like A-okay, because I don't want to. I'm so excited to see Anthony Richardson versus Lamar Jackson. I think that's going to be a really, really fun game. But now I have to dig and look for another game. So Evan, quick vamp.
Yeah, so mine has honestly more real NFL implications than fantasy implications. But I'm looking forward to the Panthers-Seahawks game, mainly because I want to see Geno continue to actually show what he showed last year. In week 1, he looked awful. I want to see that Seahawks defense start to get a little bit healthier. And then they hopefully are getting back Charles Cross, hopefully, to be able to get a bookend back on the field. So that'll be really important for me to see. And then Carolina, like I've been so disappointed with what I've seen out of Bryce so far this season. Being the first overall pick, I get it. There's a lot of stats and information out there about being the first overall pick and what it actually looks like for fantasy. But I just have had an awful time being able to watch those games and think that something's actually going to work out for him. And it's really unfortunate because he was an absolute gamer at Bama.
Are you a Panthers fan by chance, Evan?
No, I'm actually an Eagles fan.
Oh, all right. Just the way you were talking about it, I could hear the pain in your heart. I'm guessing you're a Bryce Young fan at least, because I could hear it there.
Actually, Evan was the biggest fan, I think, of the coaching staff on the Panthers more than anything else, because on paper, it's awesome.
It might be one of those like too many cooks in the kitchen thing though, where you got Josh McCown in one ear and you got Frank Reich in another, and if you're getting conflicting opinions from everybody there, that can sometimes be a little bit damaging to the development. But as a Bears fan, I kind of cracked the joke earlier on Twitter today that we might be looking at the number 1 and number 2 overall pick in this year's draft if things keep trending the way that they are.
Yeah. I mean, our other co-host that isn't here is also a Bears fan, and he was also doubling that as just okay. I was optimistic, but I'm now completely out, and I'm just hoping for the 1 and 2 at this point. Which isn't there could be worse situations to have the if you just have even a 2 top 3 picks next year, that'll be pretty nice.
Imagine being the Browns fans that they're bad, they're tied to their quarterback for forever, and they have no first round pick.
He looked so bad.
So bad.
He just looked so bad, and you paid him $230 million. Oh, that is just.
I drafted so much Deshaun Watson this offseason. I need somebody to tell me that the process was right. Like it hurts. It's so bad. I know.
He seemed like a screaming value, man. It's brutal.
I mean, if you drafted Deshaun Watson, you probably drafted Calvin Ridley too, because the rest was just getting knocked off and everything's fine. So you have Calvin Ridley. That's a plus.
There you go. Yeah, there you go.
It's a win.
Yeah, you could take that to the bank, I guess. Okay, well, I will go ahead and this might be I'm actually surprised no one picked this one either, so I'll sort of jump on it as my placeholder game. I'm excited to see Rams Bengals, guys. I mean, this is a Super Bowl rematch, and I want to see, one, can the Rams continue to somehow be good despite all odds? With their sudden revelation of Puka Nacua, can Tutu Atwell keep being good? Which I never thought I would ever say that sentence. I can't believe we are here in this day. Kyron Williams, I will second that. Can't believe we're saying that here in this day. That can Kyron Williams remain? I think he's got to be like a top 5 RB right now.
Number 2 in PPR.
Get out of here. Like, what's going on? Just like we all thought, right, guys? So yeah, I want to see that side of it. I want to see Matthew Stafford continuing to look awesome. Like he looks revitalized, fresh. He's making some crazy sidearm throws. I want to see that continue against the Bengals defense. That's, okay. But on the other side, I want to see, like, is this finally the game where Joey B shakes off some rust? It sounds like he might be injured and is sort of like a question mark to even play. So that's not good. Bengals starting 0-3. Yeah. So are we going to see any sort of bounce back from any of the Bengals options that were drafted very, very highly? I'm very excited to see if they could put anything together against what was supposed to be a hapless Rams defense with just Aaron Donald on the team that has looked totally decent, if not good, if not great. So I want to see all those things. I think it'll be very, very, very interesting.
Didn't even mention Tutu Atwell, who's currently 7th in receiving yards in the NFL.
I think I did, but if I forgot,
sorry.
Yeah, I think I said him crazy. Right before Kyron of I can't believe we're here in this day where I'm asking, can Tutu remain looking good?
Right.
I never thought he was good in the first place. So remaining good.
We all came into the season expecting to be playing Tutu Atwell, Puka Nacua, and Kyron Williams, just the trifecta of an offense you wanted every piece of.
Yeah, that high-powered Rams offense we were all clamoring for, banging the table for.
Against the 49ers defense week 2.
I like Austin Thomas calling it in the comments. Bengals win and get their season back on track. We'll see, man. If Joey B is out, that might be a tall order. But speaking on these guys where we can't believe we are flexing them, let's talk about these guys a little bit in a segment that Mike has dubbed Weird Flex, but okay. We are going to talk about some guys that, I mean, Mike, you're sort of the daddy of this segment. Do you want to give the people the sort of description, what you were envisioning for this?
Yeah, I can run through it real quick. So these are a couple of names that 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, if you said this is a must draft player or a player that I want on all of my fantasy teams, you're getting laughed off of Twitter. Like, they're going to take away your blue check mark. They're not going to let you put content in anymore. I'll lose my job as an editor at Last Word on Sports. Like, cannot condone giving this as advice. But now all of a sudden you have to play them. So some of the hot button topics and who I want to talk about and see if you guys think they're going to stick around or if this is just kind of smoke and not fire. We've got like Jacoby Myers, Kyron Williams, Durham Smythe, Jonathan Mingo, like some names that are already popping up because they're on everyone's mind. So Corey, I'll let you lead it off. Talk about a player that you think isn't just smoke. Like, this guy is a weird flex, but okay.
Sure. Yeah, I think that my selection, I don't know how hot it is, just based on how he's looked. The fact that he was a first round drafted wide receiver. I think a lot of people probably thought, kind of a lower passing volume offense, and that's why they might have strayed from him. I can at least say that I was always a believer, and it just is very validating now to see Zay Flowers absolutely pop off like the dog I knew he was. He has looked awesome. I mean, he has been the wide receiver one pretty easily for the Ravens. He's looked electric with the ball in his hands. He is demanding targets. First game ever in the NFL. I think he went 9 for 10, which heck yeah, efficiency. I will take that. And look, he's a rookie. I think he's only going to get better. He has put himself firmly in the must flex option for me. And, I don't even think that has anything to do with the fact that OBJ, of course, can't stay healthy because, of course, he can't. And they don't really have anything else I'm worried about. Rashad Bateman has had years and years to prove it. Hasn't shown me anything I'm worried about. And now that the running game is also questionable, with J.K. Dobbins being out, I think they just rely on Zay more and more. And like I said at the top, he's only going to get better and better, which is kind of a scary thought considering what he has already done in these first 2 weeks. So I am and have been on the Zay Flowers hype train, and I am loving every minute of it. I will go ahead and pass the baton to Dave.
So, when you guys first asked me this, I said Brian Robinson, but I think that's kind of a lazy, boring guy to talk about. Like, he's the RB3 right now in scoring. Of course you're starting Brian Robinson. So I want to go a little bit deeper, and I got a few guys that I could talk about here. I was just prepping for my Starts of the Week show, and this is what we do on my show on Wednesdays or on Thursdays, is we talk about some guys that are a little bit deeper down there. So I already talked about Justice Hill and Zach Moss a little bit. I'm starting both of those guys. Already mentioned Tutu Atwell, which I think is another kind of fun flex play, but let me throw Michael Thomas out there, a guy that people had just written off for dead. And sorry to completely throw you guys a curveball here and not talk about Brian Robinson.
I love it.
But Michael Thomas has 8+ targets in back-to-back weeks, and in this matchup, going up against Green Bay, Jair Alexander.
That's a tough one, to be fair.
It is, yeah. Really stumbled through that one there. I promise I haven't been drinking tonight. But he's not going to be shadowing Michael Thomas because Michael Thomas has really seen a new role. We saw him playing so much out of the slot when he was in Joe Lombardi's offense. Now he's kind of moving around all over the place. He's taking some slot snaps. He's playing flanker. He's playing out wide. He's doing kind of a little bit of everything. We've even seen him line up in line as a tight end. So the Packers have been pretty good at limiting big plays. So in this matchup, I'm actually a little bit lower on Chris Olave, but they gave up so much to Desmond Ridder over the middle of the field. Week 1, I'm going to kind of throw that away because we've seen that Justin Fields can't hit anybody in the middle of the field, but Desmond Ridder was eating them alive in the middle of the field last week. So the worrisome thing here is that it's a 43-point over-under, so I'm a little bit concerned about that, but I really think that Michael Thomas could be the wide receiver one, drawing more targets than Chris Olave in this game, so he's a guy that I have inside my top 30 wide receivers this week, which makes him a pretty strong flex play.
I love to see the resurgence of Michael Thomas, man. He went through such a tumultuous ride to the bottom, like from being he was by consensus the number one wide receiver at a certain point in time years ago, and now he has a chance. I mean, I don't think he can get back to number one overall, but he could sneak into that like wide receiver one conversation if all things go right for him. It's really exciting to see. Okay. What about Evan? Evan, you got a hot one for us?
Yeah, so I don't know if it's super hot, but I'm going to go with Nico Collins. He's going up against that Jaguars defense that's been giving up a lot of pass yards. If you're looking at it, they're probably going to be behind in the game. I think it's pretty safe to say that that's going to be the case. And then you also just go in and you start looking, okay, like his air yard share the first week was just astronomical. I mean, we're talking 60+%. We're talking 20+% week 2. I mean, we're talking a guy that's getting over 20% air yard share in every single game. He's their deep field threat. They're going to try and hit a home run with him. And then on top of it, he's also seeing a target share of over 20%. So you think about all of that and you put all of that together with the fact that they're going to be behind. CJ Stroud very well may throw 40+ passes in this game because they're going to get behind early. And they're just going to have to throw the ball based off a game script. So I like the chances.
I like that one a lot. And I will piggyback off and just say it is a lot of that has to do for me of just how like ballsy CJ Stroud is playing right now. Just no F's given, just completely balls to the wall football, chucking it up for Nico Collins. Nico Collins is like wide receiver 6, I think last time I checked. What?
He's up there.
So even crazier than that, I don't know how you guys feel about PFF grades. I usually throw them out the window, but when they confirm my priors, then I love to talk about them. And Nico Collins right now is the wide receiver 4 in PFF grades. You got Tyreek Hill, Brandon Ayuk, Justin Jefferson, and then Nico freaking Collins. Touted this guy for years and years and years, and I'm finally feeling like it's paying off. So couldn't be happier about Nico Collins this season.
Yeah, I feel very silly. I spent all offseason, if you've listened to this show before, I'm touting, like, rookie quarterbacks don't support guys. Rookie quarterbacks don't support guys. I wrote an article on it going back through the last, 10 draft classes, and all I found is that rookie quarterbacks don't support guys unless they set rookie passing records, which CJ Stroud is currently on pace to do by a lot. So if CJ Stroud continues to be good, I'm going to be eating a lot of crow, but it's the right process, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to point to that article, too, of being like, all the data points you used are real. Like that all was real data, but it's even crazier to think that Nico Collins is overcoming that and still being awesome. It's really interesting to see. I want to see that pace keep up for him. If he finishes as a wide receiver 1 and you have him on your team where you drafted him, that is straight up money.
And I know for me as well, shout out to Jordan Richards about the call out on CJ Stroud. Jay Richards, he had been on CJ Stroud over Bryce Young for a very long time, and he was trying to convince me for a long time as well. And yeah, he was absolutely right.
Yeah, after 2 games, we can't make any conclusions unless it's the conclusion I had 2 months ago. Then it's 100% locked in.
Yep.
Or if it's proving like one of us on the podcast wrong, then we like to tout that out and be like, I told you. Victory
lapping each other. It's great.
Yeah, it's really good. Our text message thread gets so toxic.
Oh, yeah.
So bad.
What's the point of sports if you can't? Yeah, what's the point of sports if you can't talk crap to each other?
Yeah, I guess that's true. Okay, well, speaking on that, Mike, you still need to get one, right?
Yeah, I would love to. So I'm wearing my Steelers jersey, but I am going to point out a player that ate a bunch week 1, was out week 2, should be back week 3 against the Steelers secondary that is not good at football right now. I'm talking about Jacoby Myers. They're going to try their best to stop Devontae Adams. I don't know if they'll be able to. I know they can't stop Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers. So I think Jacoby Myers is going to eat against either Levi Wallace or old Patrick Peterson or rookie Joey Porter Jr., who can't stop holding receivers. Like, there's just a lot of passing volume that the Raiders are going to need to do if they want to win this game. So I'm all in on Jacoby Myers for this week, which I was not going to say 2 months ago. Anybody have any feedback on that, or everybody agrees with me and I'm killing it?
Yeah, just a genius call right there. No way to possibly push back. I mean, I don't want to say like anybody kind of called this, but you almost in a way, shouldn't be all that surprising that Jacoby Myers was like the clear cut wide receiver one, like getting plays drawn up for him. Josh McDaniels, you could just get the sense that he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room, that like he knows better than everybody else. He went and brought in all of his old friends from Foxborough, and like I said, I don't think anybody predicted this to happen, but we can't be all that surprised that I think in Josh McDaniels' head, the same guy who thought that Tim Tebow was a better NFL quarterback than Jay Cutler might think that Jacoby Myers is a better NFL wide receiver than Davante Adams. I mean, sometimes I think he tries to outsmart himself, and he's doing just that with Jacoby.
I think that's especially true considering, everything that we can sort of see behind the curtain with McDaniels and the fact that Davante Adams has already been like sort of vocal about his displeasure, even though he's walked that back at this point. But he had already said, like, I don't know what, we're doing here in terms of the coaching, in terms of the play calling, in terms of bringing Jimmy G in. I think McDaniels has it in him like to be like, okay, you're going to talk. All right, well, you're wide receiver 2 now. Deal with it. Jacoby Myers, step on up. Like the fact that could even be true, the fact that I'm even saying that is absurd. But I rest my case.
Coach is trying to overcoach sometimes, but just imagine being Davante Adams. Like you sign with the Raiders because you're so excited to play with your college roommate. You're so excited to play with Derek Carr, and now you're playing with Jimmy Garoppolo, and you're the second most targeted player on your team. Like, not the move.
All right, so yes, no, real quick. Does the trend of Jacoby Myers and Davante Adams continue at 70% target share between the two of them? Over or under?
I think it's going to continue. I mean, who else? Hunter Renfrow is like technically, I guess, still there. Josh Jacobs doesn't catch passes out of the backfield. I think it's just going to continue being hyper targeted through those two.
Hooper? Any love for Hooper?
I completely agree. Between Hooper or Michael Mayer?
Mayer, yeah.
If you want to say rookie tight ends don't matter, look at Michael Mayer. If you want to say rookie tight ends do matter, look at Sam Laporta. Either way, you're right.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think that's the best way to phrase it is who else? Hunter Renfrow hasn't been good in years. I don't even know if he was good. I think he just got fed a lot. And now you have Myers, who I think is, just pound for pound a better wide receiver than Hunter Renfrow, and is capable of making plays. And if McDaniels wants to draw a million plays up for him, there's only so much he can overcome when you compare to Adams. You got to give Adams some looks here, but 70% target share between the two of them. Yeah, I don't see that changing. Okay, guys. Well, we went through that nice and briskly. I don't know if we have any additional names here. I know Mike made a little bit of a list. We can maybe go through some of these guys if you find them particularly interesting. I want to just scan the list real quick, and I see QJ's on there, and I just want to say no on that one personally for me.
I mean, we can fly through it and just do it's like a quick start sit, but like a really sad start sit.
Yeah, like hey, we've had some really, really awful injuries already 2 weeks into the season. If you lost any of those big name guys, you're staring down the barrel of maybe starting some of these guys on your team. Let's talk about it in a desperation, like flex play. Who are we going to start from this list? Mike, do you want to just read them out and we'll go from there?
Yeah, I'd love to. So at wide receiver, we have Jonathan Mingo, Elijah Moore, all of the Chiefs wide receivers. Take your pick. Nico Collins, we already talked about. You're going to start him. Although I'm going to call out now, I'm not starting him. I think the Texans turn into a pumpkin this week. Let's not dive into that too much unless you really want to. Jaden Reed, Matt Collins. If you don't know who Matt Collins is, he's the leading receiver for the Atlanta Falcons. Josh Reynolds.
Arthur Smith.
God. QJ. And then I also wrote the New England wide receivers. So Kendrick Bourne, Demario Douglas, if Juju Smith-Schuster still exists. So we got a lot of wide receiver options, and they're all pretty ugly. So, Corey, from that list, who's your favorite?
Yeah, out of those guys, I won't count Nico because, like you said, I think he's spoken for at this point. If you have him, you're going to start him for lack of like a crazy better option. I will go ahead and I will go back to bat for Sky Moore. I know it was the Jags, and he honestly, I think it was just 3 for 70 and a touchdown, so not a lot of receptions. But I have a feeling that the Chiefs are going to start taking off to their regular form that we know them to be great, and for Patrick Mahomes to sling it. And just hoping that the more that Kelsey comes off of his kind of, I think they're kind of trying to ease him in a little bit. The more and more he gets off of that, I think the more pressure is going to be put on him. The more defensive looks are going to be used to try and stop him. Hopefully that just opens up more and more for Sky Moore, who I think is still the guy that they want to turn into the target leader behind Kelsey, personally speaking. I know Kadarius Toney is your love in your life, Mike. He had a decent game. I mean, better than week one, for sure. Not difficult to beat week one for his performance, but I think he'll still be kind of gadgety. I think it'll still be kind of game to game for him. I feel kind of similarly with Justin Watson. I think he'll just have games sometimes, but I think if you're looking for a consistent flex guy that can get you somewhere between like 10 to 16 points a week, I still believe in my heart it will be Sky Moore.
I wholeheartedly disagree because Kadarius Toney is the GOAT. That's kind of joking, but also as we look at
passes.
Yes. As we look at target per route run stats, which if you use those, hats off to you, but it's just an absolute disaster because Kadarius Toney is number one in almost all target per route run ways that you can cut it, as long as you have his snap count included. So they're working him back from injury. Every time he's on the field, he's getting the ball. So if you need, it's weird because he is such a boom bust player, but I do think that his floor and his utilization in the offense is going to continue to be safe. And as he works back from injury, maybe we do see an explosive finish to the season, or he gets hurt, turns to dust, and he fades into the mist like everybody expects him to. But
I kind of agree with you in a certain sense in terms of like I like both of our picks sort of there, because Sky Moore to me is just a guy where if you need the 10 points, if you just need a guy to put points on the board, I think Sky Moore is your guy. If you need to vastly overwhelm your opponent and just put a boom guy in there that could get you 0 or he could get you 20 plus, Toney is probably the man for that. So I'm
sure Rashee Rice is going to have a 3 touchdown week. And
that is the way. For it. That is how it happens. Yep. Or Justin Ross just out of nowhere from the top rope.
Dave,
count me in on Team Toney, and I do like Sky Moore as well. I think that as this season progresses, we're going to see everything just kind of funnel towards Travis Kelce, Kadarius Toney, and Sky Moore. I think last week Mahomes attempted passes, I think it was 12 different players. I mean, it's crazy how they are just getting everybody involved there. But Toney was second on the team in targets behind only Travis Kelce, and they fed him a jet sweep in back-to-back weeks. And I don't know exactly what your stance is, Corey, on Kadarius Toney, but he's just so electric when he's got the ball in his hands. Like, you see it, like yesterday or last week, they fed him a little bubble screen and he just like broke 3 tackles on the way to a first down, like with ease. Like, he can just do things with the ball that not many other guys can do. He missed almost all of camp with an injury. So I think that's kind of why we saw all those drops in week 1. But even after all the drops, they went right back to him as the number 2 option in the offense. So I think that we only see him get better from here. And my thing with Kadarius Toney, why I kind of faded him in the offseason, is because he's one of the few guys that I will identify as injury prone, but right now he's healthy. So if you're not starting him while he's healthy, I don't know when you are going to start him. So I give a slight edge to Kadarius Toney in my rankings just for the ceiling.
Dave, just curious, where do you have him in your rankings for this week?
I've got him as my wide receiver 31 this week.
Okay.
So much higher than most. But I chased the ceiling.
That's below Nico Collins by 1 spot, or who was that? You had your wide receiver 30 earlier.
I said inside my top 30 was Michael Thomas. I've got Michael Thomas at wide receiver 28.
Okay. Well, maybe by the end of this podcast, we can get you to flip him.
Well, I mean, I love all of the things you said there. I mean, I like Toney's talent. I really like his talent. The things you said, I don't like his injury history.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like his kind of like, I don't know if it's poor work ethic or it's just, I don't know. I'm not sure what it is. I can't really it's like an intangible that I can't put my finger exactly on. But I think if he could just,
is it really sending death threats to people on Twitter? Is that it? Like the DM
it.
Death threats? Because that's
Maybe.
Totally understandable. If you fade him for threatening to kill fans, I'm with you.
Yeah, it might be a little bit of that. It might be a little bit of his like weird video he took where he was in the dark and yelling at Giants fans that look at me now kind of thing. I don't know. But for fantasy, you kind of got to throw a little bit of that out. But I just think that if he showed that he could stay healthy more than he has so far, I'd be much more in on him. He's just such a scary player for me to if I'm flexing him to try boom bust, sure. If I'm putting him in like my wide receiver 2 slot, I just don't even think I could do it. I think that is just.
He was a guy that I didn't draft at all. Like in the 8th or 9th round, I was disgusted with that ADP in the offseason. But then a bunch of people dropped him in leagues I was in, and I picked him up off of waivers. And now all of a sudden I find myself in a position where I like have to root for and stand for Kadarius Toney. And I don't want to be there, but this is where everyone forced me to be because the pendulum swung too far in the other direction.
I feel that Mike was definitely pushing the pendulum on me for Toney. I was not super in on him. And then Mike, his first show that we had Mike come on the RPG podcast, we titled the episode after his irreverent love for Kadarius Toney. And it kind of flipped me to like, okay, I can, in Dynasty, I can sit a second, like a competing second and like get him. And that seemed like a screaming deal and remains to be seen whether or not it is or isn't. I mean, it's still very early, but I will say that, sending a second for him made me play him in a lot of my week one leagues where I have him. And I feel pretty burned from that. So you're right, though. If he is healthy, has a good matchup, probably worth a flex spot unless you have some, obvious better player there. But okay, we talked some Chiefs wide receivers. Evan, do you got anyone from this list you're eyeing?
Yeah, I'd be eyeing Kendrick Bourne. I know he's going up against the Jets, but if there's one guy in that offense that's a deep ball threat, it's Kendrick Bourne. You look at how Bill O'Brien's using him in that offense. He's pushing the ball downfield. I get it. Mac Jones and his deep ball leave a lot to be desired, to say the least. But if he can catch one or two of those deep balls, there is the chance that he could potentially take it to the house for a touchdown. That's what you're hoping for, that long play with a touchdown out of him as a flex player.
Okay. Yeah, I think that the one that I'll sort of couple with that is Hunter Henry, who has been kind of my victory lap already this early in the season of, I looked at him being basically undrafted and it was like, guys, that it's Bill O'Brien and he's going to use tight ends. And Hunter Henry is still a good tight end. And so he was my like last round or even like after the draft was over grab. And thus far, he's my tight end that I am starting until he shows me that I shouldn't start him in leagues where I don't have like one of the top 5 guys. So
I wrote a Dynasty tight ends ranking article in the offseason, just trying to go through everything. And as part of it, I said I was only including one tight end per team. So I didn't include Hunter Henry because I included Mike Gesicki. I was so in. And now Durham Smythe is doing the Mike Gesicki thing that we all thought we would do in Miami.
Yeah, Gesicki was a guy early in the offseason I was drafting so much. Like, I got so excited about the landing spot when he signed with the Patriots. And very rarely do I dig myself out of a hole that I bury myself in. And it was around July. I was reading some Patriot camp reports, and it's just the drumbeat for Hunter Henry was so steady. And I didn't hear a thing about Mike Gesicki. So in like late July, I pivoted. And I don't know if you guys know, I'm a psychopath. I do like 1,000 drafts every single offseason on Underdog. And I completely pivoted. I went from like 30% Mike Gesicki to, by the time the season kicked off, being at like 28% Hunter Henry. And it's just a beautiful thing right now. I'm sitting like first place in so many of my leagues just with Hunter Henry putting up these points. It's not going to last. And like if I could trade an underdog, I'd be selling high, but I'm just going to ride the wave as long as I can.
Well, I will say, I think Mike is with you with the thousands of best ball leagues on Underdog. Myself and Evan, I think we're in like 20, 30 dynasty leagues. And
that's even harder.
It is.
Gotta manage those.
It makes me even more glad that I am in Washington State where we don't have Underdog, because if I was also doing Underdog, then I would probably have 1,000 best ball leagues. And combined with my 30 dynasty leagues, I'd be in really big trouble. So kind of one of those moments where sort of glad I don't have access to that. But man, Hunter Henry is definitely showing up. There's even leagues where, man, I took him so late and he's like my second or third flex that I'm just like, tight end premium,
plug him in,
scoring, plug him in. Okay, well, looking at this list here, I only see one other guy that I kind of want to get your guys's thoughts on. Josh Reynolds. I mean, no one's really talking about him. I think a lot of people aren't in. I think I'm probably more on that train too. I think a couple of flashy games, you can't really be sold on it per se, but I'd love for someone to tell me otherwise and confess to being a Josh Reynolds truther, because he he looks all right, and he's playing a role that the Lions kind of desperately need in that wide receiver too. That I don't think Marvin Jones at 39 years old is doing any good work there. Khalif Raymond is kind of a return specialist guy. I don't think he's it. Josh Reynolds thus far is showing up. So any love for some Josh Reynolds, flexing him in? Is that something that you guys can even stomach a little bit if you really had to?
Talking about the PFF grade that I called out earlier, where Nico Collins was number 4. The other notable names, I mean, it's everybody you'd expect, like the best receivers in the league up in the top 10, but the 3 names that kind of jump out: Nico Collins, number 4, Puka Nacua, number 6, and Josh Reynolds, number 10.
So wild. I hate fantasy football so much.
If you guys see me looking off to the side, so I was trying to look up the snap report for Detroit in week 1 and week 2. So it's not live for week 2 yet, but in week 1, Josh Reynolds was 49, which is second on the team for wide receiver snaps. And that was after Marvin Jones had fumbled. So he's in the doghouse for the foreseeable future. He has no upside in the offense, so he's going to get phased out as we move on. So I think Josh Reynolds, I was looking this up to say, no, you're stupid and I don't want him. But I think Josh Reynolds is going to be a part of this offense. So they're going to funnel all of their targets to Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Josh Reynolds, and hopefully Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, kind of the cool thing about Reynolds too is I feel like he is in a situation where I think a lot of people just completely overlooked him week 1 waivers. Like a lot of us did. I think they're like, okay, 1 game doesn't prove anything. I'm not going to roster him over these other like sort of premium ads. Week 2 comes around and he does it again. Now we're looking into week 3 on these waivers, guys, and he's pretty available. And I almost feel like still you only really need to drop like a couple bucks on him to get him. I don't think
nobody wants to put him in their lineup, and he can go for 100 and a touchdown again this week. Mike, exactly. I just looked it up. He led the wide receivers in snaps in week 2. There was only one pass catcher who had more snaps than Josh Reynolds, and it was Sam Laporta.
Oh my gosh. And as we talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown possibly having this turf toe injury, I don't know if there's any official reports on it yet. Josh Reynolds to the moon? We're on Josh Reynolds train? I guess. Thinking that way. Weird flex, but okay.
Shout out to Jeff Bell, who on the Football Guys YouTube Sunday morning, he does a must-start YouTube short, and he had Josh Reynolds as his must-start play of the week last week, which, you could really hang your hat on that one.
That is awesome.
He can screenshot that, put it at his Twitter background, right. And just ride that to the sunset.
Banner.
Yeah.
For sure.
Good for him.
You have to imagine like a 1 touchdown player prop for Reynolds was probably in like the plus 1,000.
Oh, yeah.
2 touchdowns. Can you imagine if you hit that? Like, that's so wild.
Yeah.
Did you see the guy yesterday who turned a $5 bet into 76,000? He had Jerome Ford as the highest rusher, and what was the other one? The 2 touchdowns.
Tony Jones Jr.
Yeah, Tony Jones Jr. 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
He gets a year's salary off a $5 bet.
It must be really cool.
Outed himself as a time traveler. Like, he had to be traveling through time.
I was going to say,
his thing.
It must be really cool to be like a legitimate fortune teller psychic and also sports bet. Like, it must be really, really nice to have both of those things going for you. But yeah, anyway, anyone else here you guys want to talk about? I think we got through a good chunk of this list. Talked about these guys, good deal.
I'd love to ask Dave his thoughts on one more player, and then maybe let you tell the people where to find him.
But on the spot, let's hear it.
Quentin Johnston. Rest of season. How do you feel?
Oh, man, I really liked Quentin Johnston in the offseason. And I think this was one of those things where I plugged in like too early, because after rookie OTAs, they were like, he already jumped Josh Palmer on the depth chart. He's going to be the wide receiver 3. And I was all in on Quentin Johnston. Kind of ignored the lack of drumbeat out of the Chargers camp. And I'm just going to blatantly steal a take from Chris Harris. I love going on his show. Chris has become a good friend of mine over the years. He doesn't do rookie analysis. He starts his analysis when a player takes their first snap in the NFL. And after week 1, he said, I couldn't tell the difference between Quentin Johnston and Donald Parham on the field. So that tells you everything you need to know about Quentin Johnston right now.
Yikes. Yeah. I won't victory lap yet, but I was never a QJ guy. Yeah. And it's looking pretty good for me right now, having avoided him in most of my rookie drafts. But remains to be seen. We shall see. Still a rookie.
A lot of season left, but he did not look so. He has not looked good so far.
And the other thing is, like, my take aside, I've said it a couple times on this podcast and on other shows. I feel like as a community, we have become so freaking spoiled with wide receiver rookies coming into the league and not popping immediately, or the rather like popping immediately and then people thinking like that's the way it goes. It's typically just not the way it goes, guys. Like
Christian Watson did nothing through week 8 last year.
Exactly. Some of these wide receivers need some time to kick into gear, and I don't think it's fair for me, as much as I was not on QJ, to go ahead and say, I told you guys so. He's not going to be good. Yep. I could totally be wrong in 8 or 9 weeks, especially if Keenan Allen or Mike Williams break down, which they have been known to do.
Don't you dare say that. I've got Keenan Allen on every team. I'm riding this man into the sunset.
I am right there with you. I hope that is the case, man. I have him in my home league. That's for no money. It's just bragging rights and a trophy. And if he can do the thing, then I will be very, very happy about that. But okay, yeah, I think this was an awesome show, man. I want to take just a quick minute before we sign off to say thank you so much, Dave, for coming on and chatting with us. I know that did Mike have like blackmail on you or something? Is that why you're here? Like we're so small time compared to what you have going on. So I'm just super appreciative.
So I was new in the industry. Like I remember when I got started, and the first person I reached out to that was like my favorite analyst in the industry, and I was like so nervous to send him a message. It was Mike Taglair, and he immediately responded and was like, "Sure, when did you want to talk ball?" And just came on my show later that week. And I thought it was so cool for like Mike Taglair, who was just a huge star in the industry, like to be willing to come onto my show. And I just told myself that, I'm going to try to pay that back whenever I can. So I very rarely say no. And like, unless it's somebody who has like actively gotten under my skin in the past and like rubbed me the wrong way on Twitter, I'm always up for going on the show. Mike, I've seen you in my replies and whatnot, and I've seen you out on Twitter over the last couple of years. Been nothing but, friendly and jovial out in those Twitter streets where a lot of people aren't. So yeah, it was an easy yes. So happy to be here. And just trying to pay it back because, like I said, I remember when I was new in the industry and Mike Taglair coming on my show, JJ Zachariason coming on my show, funny enough, Joe Bryant coming on my show, and he and I hitting it off years and years ago, and then it turned into a job. So always try to meet new people in the industry. Appreciate you guys having me on tonight.
Yeah, well, it's really cool, and we really appreciate you being here. This is, you're the biggest guest we've ever had on here other than Evan, but Evan's just big time in Tennessee construction works. But
yeah, Evan doesn't even have a Twitter because he's that big. Like if he had a Twitter,
too big for X.
When you're heavily involved in getting the Titan Stadium built, you try and stay away.
There you go.
But Dave, if you want to go tell the 20 listeners we have at home where to find you, and
and can you? I mean, we already talked about Football Guys, but can you like give us any preview about like the next ep coming out? What you guys are going to be discussing?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty on schedule this time of year. So we do a waiver show on Monday, which is kind of weird because we miss out on the Monday night waiver. So our waiver show doesn't have Jerome Ford on it this week, but that's just the nature of trying to beat everybody else to the punch. Tuesdays are our fun kind of off the wall show. We do something different every single week. We had Joey Wright on 2 weeks ago, Jagger May today. We kind of highlight some of the newer guys over at Football Guys. Wednesday is our trade target show. Thursdays starts of the week. Friday is our news show. And then Sunday morning, we do our live start sit show. So Saturdays are my only day off, but you can find me any other day. And then in the season, that's when we just have fun and talk about whatever we want to talk about, but pretty structured in season. So tomorrow will be trade targets and Thursday will be our starts of the week.
Awesome.
Hey, Dave, real quick, are you a college football fan at all? I hear Saturdays are free, so...
I do watch football on Saturdays. I haven't been a big college football fan in the past. I've always kind of liked going into prospect season with kind of a blank slate on these players and formulating opinions, looking at them all with a blank slate. But Saturdays this year, I have been watching football. I live out in Colorado, so it's been pretty hard to ignore what has been happening out in Boulder. Actually kicking myself because we were looking at tickets on Saturday, almost bought them on a whim. And the cheapest tickets we could find were like $500 to sit up in the nosebleeds. $500 for the pair for my wife and I. My thumb was like hovering over by, and I was just like, no, I can't. And really kicking myself because that was one of the best games I've ever seen in my life.
Definitely kept me up.
Yep. I was talking to my East Coast friends. I'm like, what are you doing? It's 3:30 in the morning. And they couldn't help themselves.
Yeah, what a game. That was insane. I think Colorado had like a minus 24 spread like going into it.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
Yeah, so I lived in Fort Collins for 5 years, so I've always kind of had a soft spot in my heart for CSU living in Fort Collins, but also love Deion Sanders, and I grew up a Colorado fan, weirdly enough, even though I'm from Chicago. So I didn't really go into the game with a dog in the race. I just wanted a good game, and we got it.
Heck yeah, man. All right. Well, that brings us almost perfectly on time here at an exact hour as I say this. But thank you all for joining us. Thank you again, Dave. And we'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.